Hello, hello. Lovely to see you, Ellen. Hi, Trish. We are live today, as well as producing our Connect, Inspire, Create podcast, which you will be able to listen to this episode after today. But hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good.
Yeah, good to see everybody. I have to say that we're joined today by not only our guest, Ellen, but she's actually a friend of both Trish and I. And Trish, I don't know if you remember going back to our little mini retreat that we did in Las Cruces. I think that was the first time that you and Ellen got to meet.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, other than
Yeah.
virtually, but that was our first and only in-person meeting because
Yeah,
we're in
Right.
separate
right.
states.
Yeah, and if I think back, was that 2019? I'm thinking so.
I think so.
I know those beautiful pictures in White Sands. I still have those that pop up as such fun memories. But I always love this. I love how we connect and then continue to stay, and the importance of friendships and community. So, Ellen, thank you
Thanks for having me.
joining us today. And I know that you are going to be excited. Ellen is going to share with us her topic of designing a life that you love. But before we get into some of our questions that we have for Ellen today, I'd love to just introduce you to her. So she is the owner and the creative director of Sparrow Creative Studio. And she provides strategic and creative custom brand solutions. Over a decade ago, Ellen stepped away from a successful career in corporate marketing to start Sparrow Creative Studio, which is a design agency specializing in startup and non-profit branding and events. And I know that you've had some really interesting clients over the years, Ellen. Hopefully we'll get a chance to just share, because some of those, especially the non-profits, love what you've done for them. So over the past 10 years, Ellen calls herself a multi-passionate entrepreneur, and she has designed a life that she loves. So as an entrepreneurial evangelist, she wants to introduce others to that freedom, that flexibility, and that autonomy that business owners offer. So, Trish, I'd love for you just to welcome our listeners and our guests. They're coming back to join us. So I'll hand the mic over to you for a moment.
Great. Well, welcome, listeners. And it's great to be here. And I think it's the second time we've gone live, if I'm not mistaken, this year. So we haven't been doing a lot of it, but it's fun. And we have to remember I guess I can wear pajamas from the waist down, right? Anyway, dressing up again. And Ellen, it is good to be here, with you and have a friend here. It's always nice. We've had so many great guest speakers, but it's nice when one of our guest speakers is a good friend. And also, I am one of Ellen's clients. So my healthylifemindset.com coaching, Ellen has helped design my website, my social marketing plan. And listeners, that's what she's going to share more about with us today.
All right. Yeah. And she's helped hold you accountable. And I know that Ellen has worked with me and with some clients. And before we jump into designing a life that you love, I would love just to give a little shout out to TEDx ABQ that are having their event. They've been off the radar for a couple of years. And that is how Ellen and myself met, was volunteering for TEDx ABQ. And the event is on the 30th, if I'm correct. So if you are in Albuquerque, check it out. Look them up on the website. They've got a wonderful lineup of speakers. And I see Rick returning. And oh my goodness, he has a story. So I just love that. The community and the friendships that are built. So just if you get a chance, sign up and we'll see you there on Saturday afternoon.
Let's jump into Ellen. I'm excited. I'm excited to hear about her business.
So, Ellen, I know that you wanted to share with us and talk to our listeners who might be feeling that they're on that edge of, is entrepreneurship right for me? So, handing it over to you, where would you start with that if they're standing in the mirror and asking themselves that question?
I think that's probably not even the first question that people ask. They're probably standing in the mirror saying, I don't want to go to work today. I don't know how I'm going to get it all done today. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. So they're not necessarily saying, I think I want to be an entrepreneur. They're like, is this all this, and it's not that people don't enjoy those parts of their life. You can really enjoy your work. Like, I enjoyed the company I worked for. I enjoyed the work I did. But I didn't enjoy the restrictiveness and not being in control of my life.
Right.
And I think, especially now, what I'm seeing in, chat rooms and in social feeds and stuff, people are tired, just plain tired. So trying to do your work and parent your children and deal with Zoom school and all of the other things that the last couple of years have brought to us, I think people have started to filter through, like, what is important to me and what isn't. And I also see people just drawing this line of, we're not going to take it anymore.
Yes. Yes.
So what you're seeing is a huge influx. Well, that's the wrong word. A huge exodus of people from the workplace because they don't have the balance that they want, that they don't have the health that they need, and they're not being able to manage their family and their lives the way they want. So they're just literally quitting. So I have a different perspective as a home-based entrepreneur, and I have been so for well over 10 years now. COVID was minimally invasive for me. It didn't affect.
Now let's let the listeners hang on to that one for a minute, Ellen. So listeners, she's saying that COVID was minimally invasive. Good choice of words, by the way, for her business. And why would you say that is, Ellen? That's a very positive thing.
Yeah, and I shouldn't say there was no impact, because as Carol mentioned, I do events. Events just disappeared off the map. But fortunately, I didn't have all my eggs in one basket, and where that wasn't the only type of service that I could provide. And I did see some people moving to entrepreneurship or investing more in their businesses. So I did have work, but because I work from home, I own my own schedule, I own my own space. I am in control of who I come in contact with and who I don't. And I already had everything set up. So when COVID shut down people's offices, I was already isolated. I was already at home, so
things stayed the same. They were relatively static for you then.
Pretty much so. Yeah. And my husband lost his business. He was in hospitality. So I would say the only disruptive thing was to adjust to having him in the house for a little while. But
now that's that's not an easy one.
No, over the years, we have learned how to work together in the same, to be in the same space when I am working and he is not. So we have found that balance over time.
And I think that's an important one to remind our listeners, that perhaps initially you might go, well, how am I going to do this? How am I going to balance? And Ellen, I know your kids are out of home, but that, getting that balance. I mean, my husband is home, and having your space and respecting each other. Any tips for how to put that in place?
Well, weirdly, there's a TED Talk about this. So,
good point.
I know you said you wanted to segue away from TED and then talk about me, but I am such a passionate volunteer. It is part of me. But there's a TED Talk, and he talks about how you don't go to work. Right? That it's the same as going to sleep. You don't just turn it on or off. If somebody is going to sleep, they're getting into it and then they drift off to sleep, right? And if somebody interrupts that sleep, they wake up, eventually they'll fall back asleep. But if you interrupt their sleep enough times, they're not going to get a good night's rest. So with that analogy, it's the same with work. You kind of ease into your work and then your brain is there. And when it gets interrupted, it takes about 20 minutes for you to get back to it, right? And if you interrupt it enough, forget it. You're not getting that task done today. So sharing this analogy kind of with my husband was helpful. And he's learned that I will naturally emerge from my office cocoon when my brain is ready for a break, when I've completed a task and before I move to a new one. So he stores up his little bites for when I come down for a cup of coffee. And then we visit with each other and we have a little time together. We might have a coffee break together, and then I use that time efficiently to, like, I throw some laundry in or
so you've got a real rhythm. You've got a real rhythm to your work-life balance.
Yeah. And I can't say the rhythm's always the same because I can't say every day at 10 o'clock I take a break. That's not the way my personal brain works. But there is a rhythm of deep work emergence and deep work and emergence that we have found that balance with.
Well, and if I can add an observation to that, it makes me think of, I've always had a dog in my life, always. My significant other, if you will, other than my other significant other. And that dog is triggered every time my computer closes. And so the rhythm, the way that you've incorporated with your hubby, your schedule, everything kind of flows that way naturally. And I think that to me is a real definition of some good balance, Ellen, that you've created.
Yeah, we do. And you know, going back to what we were talking about, the balance that people are missing in their lives, you know, and designing a life you love, I've been very deliberate. And maybe I wasn't right when I first started my business, but over time I've learned, and I am deliberate to say my priorities start with the family and the business is under that. So, for example, for the last almost 10 years also, once a week, I have a grandchild at my house for the whole day during the work week, which other people don't. But I make that time and I dedicate that time to build a deep relationship with my grandchildren.
And is it the same day every week?
Right now it's Wednesdays, but it has changed. So when my granddaughter Brooklyn was a little baby, it was Mondays. And then she started school, so it went to Wednesdays because Wednesday's a half day. So I would pick her up after the half day of school, you know. And now Brooklyn is going into middle school. So now I have little Bobby at my house on Wednesdays. So different grandkids now. So,
and with that, Ellen, I do have to tie, and I know this was one of the questions we had, and we actually weren't going to go there, but just listening to you sharing about family, you actually work with family.
I do. My daughter Megan is a designer in our business. Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, just to inspire others when you, once again, looking at designing the life that you love, listening to how Ellen has balanced, prioritizing family, then putting the business in, having a schedule, communicating, having time with your husband to share some quality time together. And that's one of the things I like to do, is to try and let my husband know ahead of time when there's certain sort of things that are happening, like the podcast right now, that I need my office space. I need him to help take care of the dog if she wakes up. So putting those boundaries in place, but communication.
Sure.
I think that's, you know,
Carol, that's what I was thinking about too, is the boundary setting. That's really good. The setting the boundaries, because I was going to ask Ellen, for our listeners, setting those boundaries is one of the most common challenges or pain points that my clients and I talk about. Sleep is the next, lack of, you know, not smooth sailing with their sleep patterns. But boundary setting, I might know the answer because I know you pretty well, Ellen, but when a client says, I can only do Wednesdays, what do you say?
I have a standing appointment on Wednesdays.
Yep.
I do. And you know, I'm often very honest with people. I feel like through being, you know, I am raised in a generation, you know, back then you never talked about your family. As a woman in the workplace, your family was invisible, you know.
That's true.
I started in the business world at a time where they would still say, do you have children? Who watches your children? And all of these things would still be common conversations. And if your kid was sick, they were like, so what? You know? And I will backtrack a little bit. This time that I spend with my grandkids is born out of a little bit of pain of time I did not have with my kids. I did not work in workplaces that were like, oh, sure, go see your child cheerleading thing. Or by all means, take your kid to the dentist. You'd have to call in sick to take your kid to the dentist. And that's not healthy.
So that is another reason to encourage our listeners, when you are standing, as you say, on that edge of stepping into starting your own business. And it can be, I mean, Ellen, what do you wish you had known way back then when you left corporate and started your business? Was there anything perhaps that you would have done differently right in the beginning?
Right in the beginning, I would have taken ownership of some things, because my default mode, and I think it's again because of programming, you know, school is a regimented time. You get up, you go to school, blah, blah, blah. And then work is regimented time. You get up, you know. And so I started to incorporate that when I started my own business. I set my alarm clock for the same time. I got up, I forced myself to sit at the desk for a certain amount of time. And over time, I realized this is not how I work best. And so now I don't set an alarm. I wake up when I'm not tired anymore.
I love that you could do that. I know you shared with us.
It's not always the same time every day, you know.
And when are your first appointments typically? How do you manage your mindset for your first appointments every day?
I don't plan any appointments before 10 a.m. ever. And I try to only plan appointments on one day.
Interesting.
Scattering appointments around is just disruptive to my flow, my personal flow. Because I'm an introvert, talking to people can be draining. So I tend to lump it and then move on from it.
Absolutely.
I like that. I like that.
I do. We have a comment from a guest who's watching us live. So Shirley, thank you for a comment. I'd love to just read it out, ladies. It says a schedule of family fun, exercise, and then work is how she completes her calendar each week. And she shares it's a decision she made over 8 years ago. And that balance of boundaries has worked so well for her. That she also commented, Ellen, she loves that you allow yourself to follow your own personal flow. And I do. I think that's wonderful. I am definitely a morning person. And I think, Trish, you're an evening person, if I remember correctly.
I am a night owl to my core. When I traveled with business, I would get up 2 hours early to truly be awake. So, I'm so glad one of our listeners and watchers shared. That means a lot. Thanks for being there.
Yeah, I love that. Love to see the comments. And of course, Trish, we did say we want to do some more lives because they're so much fun and it's so much fun to have interaction. But Ellen, what would you say now? And I know that you have worked with a lot of nonprofits. TEDxABQ has been part of your portfolio. What has brought you the most joy in your business?
Well, we have, like I said, pivoted over time. We used to offer a lot more services and we've really narrowed it down to the things that bring us joy. So one of them is working with new startups, helping a startup like get their first branding, get their logo, their business cards, their website. It's so exciting because there is a time of joy in that person. And when we deliver that brand, that joy like really soars. It becomes real. So that's something we really, really love doing. And the other thing is we love doing events. And we do that a lot with nonprofits, especially fundraising events.
Can you share one or two types of groups that you work with? If not, the businesses themselves, just the categories?
Well, right now we're working with the Rio Grande Down Syndrome Network. We've worked with the Juvenile Diabetes Association, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So lots of organizations like that are health related or community focused.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And what we do is help them maximize what the impact that they can have. So lots of times in a nonprofit organization, they tend to hold onto their checkbook really tightly and they don't invest in some things. But investing in branding and marketing and exposure, adds credibility because people then understand, but that information, when people know what you do, they're more likely to get involved. So, but people don't want to give their money to some place that maybe looks a little shabby or a little sketchy. That's
right. They've got to put the mark out there and let people see them. So that's the importance, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And those events bring community.
Yes.
So that's the other thing. I really did miss that during COVID, is that community surrounded around a cause and that synergy that comes from that.
And with a small business, what comes to mind, what you just shared, Ellen, is doing it right the first time. I'm a small business entrepreneur. Carol's a small business entrepreneur. You have a small business. Doing it right the first time, not stretching it out for several years and then saying, wow, wish I would have done this right in the beginning. And I was thinking you are working with people intentionally, which is another thing I think our listeners, I would hope, would really grasp onto, is think about what brings you joy. Think about the time in a business, depending on your product or service, obviously. But I would say you and Megan are working in the honeymoon period.
Oh, 100%. And people, I think I posted this recently and it was a pretty popular post on my Instagram, but people keep asking me, I think it's because my hair is changing to gray, when am I going to retire? And my answer is never. I love what I do. And if I didn't do this for money, I would do this as a volunteer.
I'd love to that is just so wonderful. And Ellen, I'd love to throw something out there, and Trish, for you as well, because this is something that I was just discussing this morning, and it's community building to me. But trading services allows you to be able to share your gift with somebody else, and in turn, if they have a gift, to share with you, and then you're building community. So I know this is a random one that I'm just bringing in here, because there's certain people, obviously, you've got to, if you're on your own and you've got to make an income, you've got a mortgage to pay, you've got various expenses. But what are your thoughts on trading services and community building?
I have done that before. And we've done bartering for lots of things. You know, my husband, especially as in the hospitality business, he catered somebody's wedding who framed our pergola. Like, you know, they swapped services that way. So I have done that in the past.
Trish, absolutely. How about you? Is that kind of something that you've experimented with? We were just sort of saying, you know, we often are so individual, and so we've got to have everything of our own and own everything of our own. Whereas if we exchange services, does that not help build community? And I know Trish is in the middle of building a house. I have no idea how that plays into that. But Trish, what are your thoughts of trading and bartering?
It's a great question. I think it completely depends on where you're at in your life. If you're starting up a business as a woman with kids and a household, and really where I'm at in my life, I too have done some trading before. I think in my opinion, you have to be really careful because you want to make sure you really establish the value of your business very firmly. And I tend to, what my personal preference is to volunteer my time in my community. Pick a couple of, you know, the animal shelter, or I worked with Head Start. Volunteer your time that way. That's what I personally do. And then I keep my business very separate, and I establish a value, and because I do need the income right now as I'm building this house. And I'm fairly new, well, a few years now, but I'm not at a point where I can really economically, you know, give too much away. But it's a great question because it really depends on where you're at with your business.
And that's what's so perfect, because, you know, Ellen, you had to pivot when your husband lost his job. You had to change your focus and take things quite seriously. Not that you weren't already, but you added
we already were. So
you added some fun elements, which is also just encouraging to give people permission that you absolutely can pivot and add different income streams. Because I know for a while you were making stickers, and that was your creative brain having fun. And I loved your stickers. And so, you know, I don't know what you've done with that business, but what about some other jump off little businesses that you've played with over the 10 years that you've been doing this?
Over the 10, well, gosh. I don't know. Yeah, because there's been times where different things are appealing or interesting. And, you know, some of the things, like, because I did, before I was a marketing director, had a background in administration. So social media administration and, you know, VA services were a place that we started and then decided that's not where our passion is. And partly because of like the boundary thing that we talked about. I don't tend to work like a specific set schedule, and that type of work requires that type of schedule. So I said no to that moving forward because I want to have the flexibility in my schedule and the autonomy. You know, we talked about boundaries a little bit. I often work weekends, but I don't have any customers calling. I'm in a relaxed mood. You know, I may work for 2 hours. I work if I'm creatively inspired, you know, and if I'm not, I don't work on the weekend. But, you know.
And by the way, listeners, the reason I think as we were hearing earlier, the reason Ellen works on weekends, and several of us do from time to time, is because we love what we do. We don't always love what we do, let's be honest, but for the most part, we love it enough that on the weekend we get motivated.
Right.
We have
but
time.
There's two like groups of entrepreneurial voices right now. And one says hustle, hustle hard. And the other one says never work weekends. And my balance is somewhere in the middle.
That's good.
So I don't want to have this person tell me what to do, and I don't want to have that person tell me what to do. I want to choose what's right for me.
That is so important. And I would love for you, as we're wrapping up this episode, Ellen, just to once again, just share one or two tips for those women in midlife who are on the edge, who perhaps go, oh, imposter syndrome. I know, Trish, you and I want to talk some more about this, but I'm not qualified. I can't do this. What do I start a business with? What would be your words of advice that you would leave our listeners with?
I don't listen to that girl.
Yes.
Don't listen to that girl, because we all have value. And I think the one thing to remember is if it comes easy to you, you tend to devalue it. But that doesn't mean it comes easy to someone else, and that someone else wouldn't very much value your help.
Absolutely.
So if it comes easy to you, that's a skill and a talent that you can share. And you don't, it's hard to make a big
don't discount it just because it's a skill you have. Don't.
Absolutely. But you can start on the side. You can start something small and experiment with it, or supplement your income, or give yourself some more, financial freedom, and then decide if that's a full direction. You can say, okay, I have a good corporate job now, but when I retire, I want my passion project to be ready for me.
Right?
So it's not an all or nothing decision right from the start. You can dip your toe into that.
Absolutely. And so often the skills that you have in that corporate position can turn into something that you can help and inspire somebody else with. So all, the life lessons that we learn, places where we spend our time, they're never wasted. They come to serve us at another time. And then there's communities, is to remember you do not have to go this journey alone. There are communities, wherever you might find that, be it on LinkedIn, be it in a Facebook group, be it on Clubhouse, finding other women to support you on this journey when that sudden going, I can't do this. There's somebody, and I think, Trish, we've used this before, that hold your hand down to somebody that you're helping come along, and then stretch your hand up to somebody else who's helping you come along. And we're all at different stages, and that's the beauty of learning. So, Ellen, thank you for joining us today. I hope that our listeners are inspired, that there is certainly many different ways to look at designing a life that you love, but you can step into it and get started. So I'd love for Trish to have an opportunity to just quickly introduce herself, as we are the co-hosts of the show. And Trish, over to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, Ellen. Designing a life. I think it's a really important subject. And Carol will put Ellen's information in our show notes.
Absolutely.
Me, I have healthy life mindset, accountability, and, it's really breakthrough coaching. You've probably heard that term, and, coaching has many descriptions, but I really tend to work with breakthrough coaching in careers and accountability. So that is me at healthylifemindset.com.
Thank you, Trish. And I love working with midlife women who are starting out their business and feeling overwhelmed and needing some simple systems to put in place for their marketing and time management. So like Ellen, I love to say there's a balance. I love a 4-day work week as best I can. Fridays are my CEO day, which is for me. So with that, I'd say thank you to those who joined us today, perhaps for the first time. Maybe you've returned as a regular listener. If you have loved what you have listened to today, please give us a like on your favorite platform. Please share this episode. And thanks to those who have joined us live. And remember, the name of our podcast, Connect, Inspire, Create. 3 little words that many of us strive for, both in our personal and our professional lives. We encourage you to go out and connect with some good people. Inspire others to live their best life and create relationships and opportunities that help lift each other up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Until next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.